let's shift gears and talk China. A lot going on with them. And I heard you say recently on, I think it was Fox, I can't remember, but you were saying that if China invades Taiwan, we should be prepared to shoot down their aircraft and sink their ships. And, the conventional wisdom in response to that is, but we won't, because we don't want another conflict and we're too weak to get in a conflict with China, which is sort of that squares the circle, because the fact that we're projecting weakness and the debacle that we had in Afghanistan is what I think you believe might lead China to do this in the first place. So how likely do you actually think it is that China would actually invade Taiwan?
Well, Xi Jinping has made it clear that he views this as part of his personal legacy to solve what they view as a 75-year-old wound before he might leave office in 2027. I think it could be much earlier than that, Megyn. I think it could be next year after the Olympics with a party Congress in which Xi will presumably be anointed with his third term in office. And I think by being unwilling to say explicitly that we'll come to Taiwan's defense, and if necessary, we will sink Chinese ships, we will shoot their aircraft down, and we will target the missile fields on mainland China they're using to attack Taiwan. We simply make that attack, that invasion, more likely. The most effectual way to preserve the peace, as George Washington said, is to be prepared for war and for your adversaries to know that you are prepared for war.
We send exactly the opposite signals, both with our policy decisions these days and by not explicitly condemning. But something weird is happening right now with China. They kind of have to be a little good until the Beijing Olympics, right? Because they don't want to see an international boycott of those Olympics. And I know that that's something that you're now calling for, not just a diplomatic boycott, which the administration has said it might consider, where it won't send its officials, but the athletes can still go. You want a full boycott, just given their human rights abuses, I gather, and the 1 to 2 million Uyghurs in concentration camps and effectively being tortured. And now we get news of this star tennis player. Her name is Peng Shuai, who was formerly ranked number one on women's doubles, I think it was. And she's gone. She came out and suggested that she had been the victim of a sexual assault by a top-ranking official in China. And then they apparently disappeared her. She was kind of gone. She posted online that she didn't consent at first. She was crying the entire time. That this one former member, again, of the Communist Party over there, that his wife was guarding the door while he sexually assaulted her. She says, "I'm still going to speak the truth about us." Within minutes, the post was taken down. She disappeared. Search engines in China are scrubbed of her. Even text mentions of her are flagged by state surveillance. Her social media account disappeared. And it's only when finally the White House spoke out and said something like, "We're concerned," that then they put out some video of her over the weekend. It was very sketchy. And the Women's Tennis Association here in America has been much better than our NBA in calling out China, saying, this is crazy. We need real proof that she's okay and not just basically a hostage doing hostage videos for you now. What do you make of it?
Yeah, well, Megyn, first off, I do want to commend the organized tennis for standing up to the Chinese Communist Party, unlike LeBron James and the panda huggers at the NBA. On the broader question of the Olympics boycott, I called last week for a complete and total boycott of the games to include our athletes, their coaches, their staff. Calling for a diplomatic boycott is basically just standing by the status quo. It's extremely unlikely that any official delegations will be traveling to Beijing given their coronavirus lockdowns. I first began to raise alarms about this question last summer when I began to study more carefully about the risks our own athletes might face. That's the first and primary reason to call for the boycott. I sent the Biden administration a letter. They wrote me back in restricted channels, even though there's nothing classified in that letter. They're just embarrassed that they have no answer to protect our athletes from ubiquitous electronic surveillance or from DNA harvesting to advance the Chinese Communist Party's advanced biotechnology programs, or simple hostage taking, as China showed itself more than willing to do to get back a senior Huawei executive earlier this year. The administration has no plan to protect our own athletes and coaches and staff. That's why we should lead the civilized world in boycotting the games. A second reason, as you point out, Megyn, is that this is a government that is today, not in the past, not allegedly, but today, engaged in genocide against religious and ethnic minorities in its country. That's not my opinion. That is the Biden State Department's opinion. They are systematically, for instance, imprisoning minorities in gulags. They are systematically sterilizing or raping ethnic women as a form of ethnic cleansing. We should not give any legitimacy to the Chinese Communist Party. This is the Winter Games. It's not the Summer Games. It is more than possible right now to rebid these games to another country. I mean, there's probably half a dozen countries in Europe right now that have the ski slopes and the ice rinks and the other facilities that are needed to conduct these games in a civilized nation.
That's right. And meanwhile, we'll see. It doesn't seem like they're prepared to do that, Joe Biden administration. I want to tell you that the Chinese media has responded to your call for a complete boycott. The editor-in-chief of the Global Times, which is the CCP's newspaper, said on Twitter that he called you political rubbish. You are, quote, political rubbish, attacked you for, quote, lies, and said that you lack the least self-awareness. Would you care to respond?
Well, Megyn, this is just an ongoing saga from the Chinese Communist Party directing their ire at me. Last year, I was sanctioned for pointing out that the Wuhan coronavirus almost certainly originated in labs in Wuhan that studied the coronavirus. So, my wife and I have not been able to take our second honeymoon to China, and I guess I won't be attending any of these games if the Biden administration doesn't announced a diplomatic boycott either, since the Chinese Communist Party seems to take an inordinate interest in my criticisms.